Remember that scene in Fever Pitch when Colin Firth is stood in the kitchen shouting at that woman from Bridgerton? She doesn't really like football, but Firth's character, an Arsenal fan, is absolutely gutted that it looks like George Graham's side have thrown away the title.
18 years! 18 years!
He tells her he's been waiting for Arsenal to win the league for 18 long, hard, boring years. Well, it's no longer 1989. It's 2023, and next summer it'll be 2 whole decades of hurt, gold trophy just about still gleaming. The last time an Arsenal player held the trophy, Shrek 2 had just been released in cinemas. Friends had just aired its final episode. Emile Smith-Rowe was 3 years old, Bukayo Saka was just 2. Mikel Arteta had just spent 2 years playing at Rangers and hadn't even signed for Everton at this point. Although he doesn't actually look any older today, does he? The man has enviable genes. Gooners may wonder some days if they made a deal with the devil, swapping an unbeaten season for an eternity of getting their hopes up. But actually, it's coming. It's just around the corner. After years of trying to walk it in, after every exodus, after all the nearly moments, Arsenal are finally ready, to stop being a basket case and lift the bloody thing again. Are you watching, Colin Firth? This is why Arsenal can win the Premier League next season. If you think of Barcelona at their best, what do you think of? Tiki-taka, no doubt. Positional play of Johan Cruyff perhaps, Pep Guardiola, and a very specific culture of a very specific club. If you think of Borussia Dortmund at their best, you think of gegenpressing, of young, hungry players, an economic way of running a European giant, and again, a very specific image of a football club. Think of peak Chelsea, and you think of their ruthlessness, their siege mentality, their win-at-all-costs attitude, and everything else that Jose Mourinho embodied when he waltzed into the club and told everyone, "I am sorry. I am a little arrogant. I think I am a special one." Now think of Arsenal at their absolute pomp, and what do you picture? If you ask some fans, perhaps of a certain age, they might say boring Arsenal, the classic back four, the all-English stalwarts of the side that won at all costs. Ask someone a little younger, and they'll tell you the opposite. Smaller, technical footballers, usually French lads, let's face it, attacking with reckless abandon and entertaining fans more than they actually won trophies. You see, Arsene Wenger turned this club on its head, and now there perhaps isn't a club in Europe who has such polar opposite identities like this. It goes some way to explaining the civil war that broke out towards the end of the Wenger years when Arsenal fan TV was at its bleak peak and the Emirates Stadium became utterly toxic.
It's time to go!
The secret to the Invincibles was that they embodied both sides of the Arsenal coin. They were powerful, they were hard bastards who you wouldn't want to knock a pint over, but they played some of the most majestic, liquid football that the Premier League had ever seen. It's actually pretty straightforward to unite Arsenal fans, and Mikel Arteta has done just that, by building a team that strives for brilliance and beauty, but isn't afraid to knock the stuffing out of you either. There's now a mural of Arsene Wenger at London Colney training ground that the players high-five before training, and they would look good playing under Wenger. Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli and Alexander Zinchenko are all players that you could picture being cornerstones of any Wenger team. And yet there's something very early 90s about this side too. George Graham would have loved William Saliba and Gabriel. Where Graham plucked the likes of Steve Bold from Burnley and Nigel Winterburn from Wimbledon, Arteta has signed Aaron Ramsdale and Ben White. Top sides need players who have had that character development in the lower leagues. You see, the brilliance of Arsenal last season was that they were dominant in possession and they had intensity, sure, in the same way that Man City and Liverpool have had the same dominance and power. But at their best, all these teams have had more than one way to skin a furry animal. Arsenal could play through you last season with the precision of Odegaard, Trossard and Jesus, weaving their way around the opposition, or they could wallop in a bullet header from a set piece. They could attack from wide through Martinelli, Nelson, Saka, White overlapping, or they could batter through the middle with a late run from Xhaka. So, why are Arsenal in such a good position to win the league next season? Well, they're still evolving. They refuse to stand still, and many of the aforementioned players are still approaching their prime. But losing out on the title means that they've doubled down in the transfer market, and they're ready to evolve further. There's a clear emphasis on Arteta looking for more weapons to win in different ways with. They now have a big physical striker and a box-crashing midfielder all in one in Kai Havertz, and he can find space on the central line in rush hour. They now have a defensive shield over the back four in Declan Rice that they never had in Thomas Partey, allowing them to commit more going forward, or they can just use Rice as a counter-pressing tool to win the ball back. They now have an inverted right back in Jurian Timber who can play Zinchenko's role on the opposite side, so they're not so lopsided anymore. Oh, and just on top of all this, they now have a chocolate Labrador called Win. Seriously, why has no club thought of bringing in a dog to the training ground before? Now, all this comes with a caveat. Mikel Arteta used pretty much the same 11 all of last season where he could, choosing not to bring the likes of Kieran Tierney into the team to switch things up with an overlapping fullback, choosing not to reintegrate Smith Rowe into the team when he came back from injury, and choosing to stick with Saka towards the end of the season when everyone could see that he was completely cream-crackered. Arteta is actually going to have to rotate next season with so many games, or he's going to find his team a run into the ground by Christmas. We're at the point now where 4 years into his tenure, he's either bought every player in the side, promoted them from the academy, or he's given them a new contract, so there's no excuse for not trusting them. In fact, it's just Rob Holding and Mohamed El Neni left, who were bought by Arsene Wenger, by the way. Everybody's changing in the immortal words of Keane. Arteta once said that Wenger was the man who first made him want to become a manager, as much as he's clearly influenced by that supervillain at Man City. More than you believe. And he's actually embraced Wenger's best teams to build a multifunctional squad capable of winning in a variety of ways. Just look at the age profiles. Saka is 21, Martinelli 22, Saliba 22, Timber 22, Smith Rowe 23, Odegaard 24, Rice 24, White 25, Ramsdale 25, Jesus and Zinchenko, two of the elder statesmen, at 26. You know, I said that Arsenal fans won't have to wait much longer to win trophies again. Well, do you honestly think that if this team stays together they won't lift something in the next 5 years? It's on the horizon. If you were playing Football Manager, this is exactly what you'd build. It's 20 years since the last title, but you wouldn't bet against them winning it next year. Even before a ball's been kicked, Arteta's made it pretty clear that this season is going to look very, very different to last year. This time 12 months ago, the first 11 was set in stone. They were blooded in friendlies leading up to the opening day of the season away at Crystal Palace as Arsenal looked to hit the ground running. Everyone remembers the season before that when 3 losses against Brentford, Chelsea and City had the Gunners rooted to the foot of the table and Arteta's job was on the line. Last season, Arsenal looked amazing with that starting 11, but when it came to the backup 11 playing in the Europa League, they looked way off the pace. Compare it to now. Everyone's had a crack in pre-season, with the final friendly at the Emirates Stadium seeing Eddie Nketiah captain the side. Now, that might seem like a weird choice, but it's pretty symbolic. Gabby Jesus is set to miss the first few weeks of the season with a knee injury, and there's no talk of Arsenal actually going out to sign somebody else to play up front. It feels like for the first time, Arsenal have at least 2 capable players in every position. And that was the difference last year. Manchester City don't miss a beat when they rotate. Remember when De Bruyne was their best player in 2017-18 when they racked up 100 points, and then how, the following season, De Bruyne was injured for the most part, only for Bernardo Silva to take his place, and they still looked incredible. In theory, this is an Arsenal side with even more tactical variety than even City. We've seen Arteta use back threes, and we've seen him build a really good deep block. We've seen him play with double pivots in midfield, and we've seen him use different types of fullbacks. He's used different types of strikers, and he's used different types of wingers. He's still learning as a coach, even 4 years in, but should he be able to sort of use all these different versions of teams that he's had at Arsenal, he could build a super Arsenal.